All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Higher Ed Podcast. I'm your host, Kamar DeJarnette. I'm here with Dr. Alan KL. I will let you tell the audience what the initials stand for, but could you please introduce yourself to the audience and maybe give us a little bit of your origin story, right? How'd you get here?
Indeed. First and foremost, thank you for having me. It's an absolute pleasure to chat with you and to chat with your audience. And so I like to tell my quick story. I'm a country boy born and raised in rural North Carolina. Grew up on a dirt road, and that area happens to be the oldest town founded by freed slaves in America, which is Princeville, North Carolina.
Wow.
It's a very small area. I tell people I carry that mentality of coming from the mud, and that's what we say from our areas. Like we get it through the mud.
Sure.
And so if it was not for my parents, my mother was in law. Excuse me, my mother was a school teacher for 30 years, and my father was in law enforcement 30 years. And so everything that I do is really to let them know that their baby boy is going to be okay.
Sure.
And so that kind of helped prepare me for my love of education. As I like to say, it was a movie back in the day called Brown Sugar, and they used to ask the question like, how did you fall in love with hip hop? And I
Yes.
ask people that other questions like, how did you fall in love with higher ed? And so
Absolutely.
I must say that, which I kind of gave a prelude to that is, my father was at the table one day and said, we need to put more funding in the criminal justice system. And my mother gave a retort and she said, no, honey, if you put more funding in the education system, you'll have less people in the criminal justice system. And
Nice.
so that kind of started this whole transition from wanting to go into law enforcement, which I did go into the Army, became an officer, into the whole aspect of higher ed, which
Thank you
I
for your
think,
service.
thank you. I appreciate you saying that. But education is the great equalizer. As I was always told, once you have it, no one can take that education from you. And education is humbling. It takes those dreams that have been deferred to make them reality. And so that's who I have been in higher ed for, over 20 years, dating myself. Recently relocated to the Maryland area from Cincinnati, Ohio, where I oversaw WGU Ohio, and now just excited to spread the horizons of WGU to the Northeast region, which is for me Maine down to Virginia over to Pennsylvania, so 12 states in DC. So that's my story.
Nice. I'm gonna tell you it's a small world because I asked that question on this podcast. When did you first fall in love with education or higher ed? So the fact that you said and yes, I did get it from that movie. So man, this is kismet. This was supposed to happen.
Indeed.
So for you, was it ever any thought of doing anything else, or was it always higher ed?
Law enforcement, entrepreneurship. I'm big on entrepreneurship. I think entrepreneurship and academia go hand in hand. And of course, coming from a small area, it's that lack of exposure is dealing with that imposter syndrome. Who am I? Who do
Yep.
I reinvent myself to? So there are a lot of thoughts that went through my head, but ultimately, I tell people you will land where your passion and your purpose align. And for me, higher ed and education ultimately, I mean, it allows you to be in multiple places, multiple facets. Again, I go from the entrepreneurship to academia to being able to be a mentor and be mentored all at the same time. It's to me legacy based. And by
Yep.
legacy based, I hate to break it to all of your listeners. Guess what? We're not going to make it out of this place alive. We're just not. I've not seen anyone do it yet. So
Right.
to me, part of that legacy is how do I ensure that while I have a stage and stage is being utilized as a parable where I utilize it as stage as being life, how
Yep.
do we ensure that our time on stage is extended? And that's by ensuring other people have that stage to pass on that message. Their message may be a little different, but man, how do we make the world a better place when we're gone to our kids, to other people? And ultimately, man, how I was always brought up, man, be kind to people, man. Like treat people right. Let's not create division. Let's do that. Let's create unity, man. And like there's always something we have in common. And
Sure.
education forces you to explore what we have in common, but also to explore those differences, but also unify.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. So one of the things you're passionate about, and this is a theme we've been talking about a lot on this podcast, is since COVID, there's been like almost a burden on higher ed and education to kind of prove its value, right? And I think, many of us in education, we know there's value there, but I think there's an added emphasis for us to be able to prove it to the students. How do you kind of view that, and how does that fit into redefining higher education for the future of work, if that makes sense?
It does. First of all, can you still hear me? Because I feel like I'm frozen on the screen, but I want to make sure you can still hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you clear. Yep.
Sounds good. So it is at a very pivotal point. COVID, what COVID, in my opinion, did is showed some of the inefficiencies of higher education, meaning that there are multiple modalities individuals can learn from.
Sure.
COVID also forced people to realize, man, that time is not limitless. Like you have to maximize time. And individuals, not all individuals have the opportunity to attend a school from 6 to 10, 8 to 5, and so forth. Our students are getting a little older, to be honest. Because if you think about our student at WGU, and this could be multiple universities, is that, when I was coming in, started school 18 and 19, but guess what? Life happens, and some
Yep.
people have to leave school. And once you leave school and now you're all focused on being a parent or taking care of other family responsibilities, you lose yourself because you've given so much of yourself to others. And then you get to the point of like, man, I'm in a career, but I'm no longer happy. I no longer feel empowered. I feel like that caged bird, and I need to be freed from that, right?
Sure.
And so education has to, first of all, show return on investment. You go to school, you're not in debt. You can actually take care of your debt. There are careers that align with your choice. Bringing this back personal for me, one of the times I was forced out of my comfort zone, and I like to say one step outside your comfort zone puts you in a learning zone, was when it was time for me to go to basic training in IT. I mean,
Okay.
basic training in AIT.
Sure.
And my father was like, son, what's wrong? I said, I'm scared to leave. He was like, why?
Mm,
I was like, what do I know outside of this small area? And I'm going to miss my friends and everything else I'm familiar with. And he said to me, he said, son, he said, it's not to be disrespectful to anybody that's here, but the people that are on the corners now most likely will be there when you get back. I didn't realize how smart he was. And not knocking my hometown, but there's a lot of people that still remain into the flood. And so I bring that up to say is education, just like myself, has to take one step outside of their comfort zone so they can be in a learning zone because we all learn differently. Just
sure.
because we are in a classroom for 50 minutes or so doesn't mean we're learning. People come from different backgrounds that have ran businesses. So it's imperative of higher ed to now meet the student where the student is at and not the other foot. We have to be more concerned now with outputs than inputs. Now, don't get me wrong, the input is important because again, we
Sure.
have to meet that student, but that people come to college or go to higher ed to better themselves, to put them and their families in a situation. And too often that's not been the case. Too often people have gone into debt, can no longer get into home ownership. And we all know home ownership is a ticket to financial freedom. So if you can't get that financial freedom, people have to start to ask that question, why am I going to school? And so I can get long winded and stay on that point forever, but I'll pause in case you want to add something to it or dig deeper there.
No, no, I love to explore that a little bit more because I think, as society, the microwave society, right? We want everything fast, right? You get an iPhone 17, next thing you know, it's the 18. So I think the student is looking for the output, right? I'm going to invest this time, I'm going to invest this money. What does it look like once I finish this, and how soon can you get me there? So, yeah, I think that's super important, and I think that's one of the things that kind of COVID, unveiled or really showed is that okay, how do I have all this time on my hands? How are you going to deliver education, and then what am I going to get from it?
Man, spot on. And I'm not going to sit here and quote all the WGU facts
Sure.
because I mean I love being an ambassador, but one thing I would like to say is like once our students graduate in 2 years, they see over $15,000 salary increase, and you start
Nice.
to think about Our average tuition cost for undergraduate is $8,300 a year. Our master's cost graduate courses are just over $8,800 a year. So you automatically see that return on investment. And I may get I don't want to say crucified, but I may get condemned for saying what I'm about to say is because again, I'm a big believer in athletics and so
Sure.
many things. But I also tell people, because again, being watching sports and everything else is part of that undergraduate campus experience. But I think people have to start questioning their institution if your highest paid employee is a coach or somebody in athletics. And so I can go a lot deeper, but then you
Right.
also start saying, why is tuition going up? And that's why we are able to keep tuition down. We don't have those sports teams. Again, I would just say WGU is undefeated in all sports, and we've won multiple championships without never stepping on the field. But I do, getting back to more of a serious point, I want people to realize that the path is no longer linear. How when I was coming, and I'll throw myself out. I graduated high school in '97. Somebody told me I was like I'm an artifact, and I was born in the late 1900s. Made me feel a certain way, so I consider myself a nice antique right now, right?
Sure.
But the purpose now is how do you go to school? How do you learn? And what I've learned through my educational journey is how much I don't know, which is
Mm,
very, very humbling. Education shouldn't put you on this pedestal that makes you think you know everything. It should force you to be like, there's a lot of things I don't know and I should explore. And so for all those that are exploring or asking themselves, you have parents that ask me, hey, what field should my kid go into? Or
sure.
what is the future of higher education? Tell people AI is going to be a big deal. Like AI is doing so many things, but people get afraid of AI. And
Sure.
they shouldn't be afraid of AI. Will AI replace some jobs? Yes. But I always like to echo this. The people that will be more impacted by AI are those who don't learn AI. Those who learn AI will still have a place and a relevance in this world. It's just like back in the day, which will again date myself, there was a game system called the Atari 2600. It was one button and a controller. You could
Yep.
do everything with that controller and that button. And then you move up to like, what are all these buttons on a PS5? It took me a while to get acclimated. And so
Sure.
I tell people we can get acclimated to it. From the pagers to the payphones to the payphones to the cell phones to
Sure.
those who use, and again, I love dating myself. It's nostalgic. Back in the day, there was a plan that you could talk to people free after 9 o'clock. But then you could pay extra to talk to them at 7 o'clock. But now we no longer pay for minutes. So I bring all this up is that we will evolve and we were okay and we will be okay.
Sure.
Embrace these changes and ensure if you're an entrepreneur, how am I using AI to run my business to give myself time? If I'm going to school, how do I align my career path with fields that will not be adversely impacted? But it's always about learning. We have to adapt. As my father always tells me, you have to adapt and overcome. And we
Sure.
will adapt and overcome.
Sure. So you're one of those people that's definitely not afraid of AI. You're more of an advocate of it.
I think it's a 50-50 thing. I mean, I call it Chatty G, Chat GBT. To me, it's Chatty G. Um, I am, I use it for not like I've seen some people use as a therapist. I do not use Chatty G as a therapist. I use Chatty G to make certain purchases. Hey, I'm looking at this TV. I'm looking at this, or what's some best investment options. I utilize it for that, but I think it's also important for us to double check it. We've
Yeah.
seen multiple cases in judicial how there was a lawyer that used it for a brief in the case, and it was absolutely wrong because you have to understand where it's pulling from. I
Sure.
think it's a source, and I'm advocating that sometimes the train has left the station and there's no need to sit back at the train station. It's like, man, I wish I would have got here 5 minutes earlier. It's
Right.
no need to think about woulda, shoulda, coulda.
Sure.
It's what's now and what will be the future state is always my mindset is because things always are changing and they will
Absolutely.
always come back. I mean, I look at styles of clothes. There are clothes that went out of style, they came back, went out and came back in. But we as people have to continue to evolve and embrace things and utilize it in a way that's beneficial to us. Now, if we get to the iRobot stage, I mean, we got a problem. But
Right.
I hope it doesn't go there. Are there dangers in it? Yeah, probably so. Am I equipped and understand what those dangers are? No, outside of utilizing common sense. Like I'm not going to have Chatty G to know intricate details about my personal life,
Right.
but I will use it again for business and other, personal purchases.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's circle back a little bit to just kind of redefining higher ed and the outcome focus. How important is the relationship with the employers and the community as you start to kind of go along that stream?
Vital. It is very vital. I sat on a panel recently, and the panelists came from three sectors: higher ed, government, and business.
Sure,
And while the accrediting body still exists, the employees and partnerships play more of a vital role. Is like they're seeing that talent, they're seeing what the talent is void of, and they're seeing the talent that they need, so they can start filtering that information to higher ed. And then from the government side of the house is to remove those barriers that have been in place. And there's a lot of red tape there sometimes. So it is very important for one, first to keep that talent within state. I mean, talent is so transient now. And I always, again, goes back to my ambassador role. The beautiful thing about WGU, our students are online. So they're already in a community. So they're more likely to stay in that communities because
sure,
states now are fighting over teachers. They're fighting over how do we get more nurses? How do we get more entrepreneurs? And you think about the 4 degree programs we have: business, IT, health, and education, all in demand careers. And just to take that a step deeper, it's imperative for universities to be more ingrained into these organizations, not just to educate the employees, but also to ensure when it's time to reskill, they are there to help
sure.
improve the morale. We should be working hand in hand and in lockstep along with government to ensure that the communities and these businesses want to stay because we're provider of the talent and we're also upskilling and reskilling that talent.
Absolutely, absolutely. Another thing that came out of COVID, I think, was or if not came out of COVID, was definitely enhanced the drive for equity, right? And I know that's another one of your passions. Can you unpack that a little bit? Equity in action in higher ed. What does that mean to you? What does it look like?
Yeah, so for me, I always like to break down the equity word, and then people have made diversity such a ugly word, which I disagree. Like when I think about diversity and equity, I don't look at it from a race aspect. I look at it from a aspect that we have to have divergent thoughts at the table. That's how we learn. Um, and so when I think about equity, what equity looks like in higher education, what I feel like COVID did is, man, I can create a micro business. I always call it. You saw a lot of entrepreneurship. We talked about it earlier about podcasts. You saw the influx of podcasts. Like overnight, they went from like 13 podcasters, like 13 million podcasters.
Yep.
Which is a beautiful thing because of the voice. And so now you started to add that from the equity aspect. You have voices out there talking about their lived experience. You see people now in education that you can think about equity. And what that does, and I don't think some people realize the ecosystem is created, is that people see you. And yes, I'm talking to you and I'm talking to your listeners. They see you and they say, you know what? I can resonate with that. I understand that. I now can see myself in someone else, and that removes the quote unquote imposter syndrome. And that's what equity is about, is that people can see themselves in other people. And again, I don't want to get in such a deep subject, but I have to just be me. When you think about people that have committed suicide, and again, I'm comfortable, I've talked about it before. Like I've contemplated suicide 3 times in my life, and I talk about it
Sure.
because I want people and that see me is like, hey, there's somebody else that understands and can relate to it. But what I tell people why I didn't do it, and then I'll bring it back is one, don't let the world define what success is to you. You have to define what success means to you. There was a time I thought success meant, hey, having a nice big house, nice 2 cars. But when I got that, I was no longer happy because the world had defined success. You have to define success for you
Sure.
And there's a quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson that states, "The greatest accomplishment is being yourself in a world that's consistently trying to make you something else." You
Nice.
are needed. Your voice is needed. Different thought process. So it gets back to the equity is that, hey, there's somebody out there doing what I'm doing from a different background, from rural North Carolina or from wherever you are. That's what equity looks like to me. Equity looks like that there's representation in the room. Equity looks like having an advocate that's in the room advocating for you when you're not there. Equity looks like that we see as many women in the boardroom that we see men. Equity looks like, man, I am supporting people and I'm putting myself in comfortable situations to learn. That's what equity looks like for me. And we can take that to higher ed, anywhere else, but that's how I define equity and diversity.
No, absolutely. And I was going to say, even from a higher ed perspective, if I'd love for you to dig a little bit further in terms of, affordability, career relevance, and intentionality, kind of that piece of it.
Yeah, yeah. So when I was coming up, it was like go to school. But now everyone can't go to school because it's too expensive to go to school. And
Sure.
that's the beautiful thing of ensuring that education is accessible, which creates equity. So if you can go to school, whether it's going through the community college route, which I think sometimes community colleges get a bad rep, but community colleges are so vital in that area. And you can do what you're doing, and then you move on to a WGU. Hopefully, you all move on to a WGU. But that's where that equity comes from. It's like you go to school, you learn those skill sets, and then you start seeing representation and equity in higher ed. Because to me, higher ed should be about equity, no matter where you're from. We forget about the rural areas sometimes. We think about at WGU, 70% of our students are underserved. 7%, over 7% of our students are women. And we have a lot of first gen students. That's what equity is, seeing them get across that finish line to say, hey, I did it. I was the first in my family to do
Right.
something. And then it removes that barrier and creates excitement for other people to do it. But we got to keep these costs down in higher ed, where again, there's an ROI. And I'm on this mission to make education, I'll just say, cool again,
Sure.
because education, higher ed has lost this cool again factor, where it used to be cool to say, hey, I'm going to college. For me, it was a different world. I wanted to go to college because of the show A Different World. I wanted to
Sure.
find my Lisa Bonet, my Whitley Gilbert, and so forth. I wanted to go to the pit, like that was my thing. And so we got to get back to people wanting to go to school because they know there's equity in going to school and there is a positive outcome from going to school. But now it's like, you don't really need to go to school. Just get this cert. You get that cert, but you need to make sure you stack it, because if you don't keep re-upping these certs, you will get left behind.
Yeah, Whitley is my oh man, that's my crush. Especially because I wear glasses, so I thought, if she went for Kadeem, she could go for me.
Man, but think about it, man. How impactful that show was.
Absolutely.
So many people. I was speaking with somebody actually earlier today, and she told me the reason that she went to school was because of A Different World. I went to school because I had to go, but it was like I wanted to go because of
Absolutely.
A Different World and a program I was in called Upward Bound. It's called Trio now.
Yep.
But I remember going to St. Aug, which is in Raleigh.
Sure.
And man, you can tell me anything the first time I went to St. Aug for the summertime. It was that exposure. And like to tie that into equity, equity is also about exposure.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I think for a certain demographic, the A Different World made college so much more of a natural next step than it was. So I agree with you 100% there. One of my probably top three shows of all. I love A Different World. So I'm right there with you.
I
Um
get stuff.
the so I think, all of this kind of culminates into, how higher ed can deal with entrepreneurship, right? We're in
Mhm,
the age of everybody wants to be a content creator. So
mhm.
many more people want to work for themselves than I would say 10, 15 years ago. Would you agree?
Yeah, without question. Again, I'm a big believer in entrepreneurship. I was blessed to speak at the Good Soul Forum and also Women Evolve, where there was a lot of phenomenal, entrepreneurs. The content creator, I tell people I struggle. Like people tell me a lot of times, like, Kel, you have all this content. Why are you not putting it online? What I would tell people, and again, you didn't ask me this, but I feel like I had to give some entrepreneurial advice for those who are thinking about starting a business, those who right now are listening may think about quitting business.
Yep.
Like pause. One, ensure that again your passion and purpose are aligning. Too often I see when entrepreneurs they are focused on a passion project, and what I mean by passion is something they're passionate about, but what problem are you actually solving? So ensure your business is solving a problem. And in addition, realize that your dream is not exclusive to you. There's someone out there that may have that same dream. So don't get mad when you see somebody else start a business like, oh, well, such and such started a business. Okay, so how do you either collaborate with that person or how do you reset and refocus? And another thing, for those individuals who are getting upset because your cousin or your family members don't buy your product, so what? It's other people out there, and don't get
Sure.
distraught about that. But entrepreneurship, I tell people, it's a beautiful thing if done right. But in addition, make sure that you are taking time for yourself, because as an entrepreneur, it's 24/7. You are
Right.
pouring into everyone else's cup. So make sure you have a board of directors that are pouring back into you. So when you get tired, you can go there for an upliftment and encouragement. And you don't have to do this by yourself. Find your village, and that's your board of directors. Find your village. It's a hard thing. Sounds weird, but I'm counting on all of the entrepreneurs out there. Reach out to me. Find me on LinkedIn. I want to hear about your business. But we need you. We need more businesses.
Absolutely. One of the things we often cover on the podcast is AI, and I think you've unpacked that brilliantly. But another topic is just leadership. Going into, this new age, I would love to hear some insights and practical strategies from you on leadership if you could share it with the audience.
Man, I'm a simple guy, man. Treat people how you want to be treated. Hire good people, get out of their way. There's no need to micromanage. If you're micromanaging to me, you want to run a daycare, and that's just never my vibe. It's Man, be confident. Make sure again you share the stage, delegate. Like don't I mean for some of us older people and probably giving wrong names right now, but back in the day there were Source Awards and Suge Knight got on the stage and he was like, for all those people tired of people dancing in their videos coming over to death row. Like for those who know, no,
Yep,
not do it.
absolutely.
For me, that's me. Like I don't need to dance in anybody else's video. Like I want you to
Sure.
have that limelight. The way that you keep talent is not really about paying them like the right dollar amount. It's about listening
Yep.
to them. It's
Yep.
about being very transparent. Too often people aren't having transparent conversations. I mean, how often in people's lives that you've been wronged or you felt the way, but you keep it inside? Go have
Sure.
that conversation, because this person can be feeling something again a different read. But if you say, hey, I'll use Tim. I don't have anybody on my team named Tim, so I'll use Tim. I was
Sure.
like, hey, Tim, my expectations was X, Y, and Z. I don't feel I got that result. So is there something I could have explained better? Or how did you gauge this interaction? And truly shut up and let them speak.
Sure.
And then you say, okay, I can understand where you're coming from, but like let's shift here. And also just make sure you understand what your talent bench looks like.
Yep.
Meaning, just because somebody's in a position, and I'll use an executive assistant, don't X him or her out for another role, because you need to make sure you're also upskilling your internal talent.
Yep.
Um, Give grace to your team. None of us are perfect. None of us, I'm going to make mistakes. Teams are going to make mistakes, but allow them to fail forward. Allow them to make mistakes, because I'm yet to meet a perfect person walking on this earth.
Sure.
So when they make a mistake, talk to them about it, but let's not chastise people, man. But like, use common sense. Like, don't ask your team to do something you're not willing to do. But communication and clarity are truly kindness. And if you're not being clear, you're not being concise, go and develop. Like, I'm still in development now as being a leader. Sometimes I'm probably a little too transparent with my team, but I'd rather be too transparent to keeping things away from them that they need to know to improve themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah, you bring up some great points. I think it's funny when you bring up the Suge Knight and dancing in the videos, right? One of the lessons I learned, I don't know if it was necessarily a leadership lesson, but I was able to kind of utilize it, in that vein. When I was in college, my brother came up there to the campus and he had a roommate, and this guy ended up being super close with us, right? Wherever my brother and I went, he was always there, right? So we're talking about Seinfeld, right? And you can use this for if your show's Martin instead of Seinfeld.
Yeah.
To me, it's the same. It's the same thing. You can make the analogy. So we're talking about who's Seinfeld, right? So I'm like, okay, I'm Seinfeld. My brother's Kramer. You're a Costanza. And he looks at us. He's like, whoa. And we're like, what do you mean, whoa? He's like, I'm Seinfeld talking about himself. So I'm like, whoa, whoa. Because I know my brother is going to be Kramer.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I'm Costanza? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, everybody is Seinfeld or Martin in their world, right?
Right, right.
And it taught me, like, hold on for a second. When you're dealing with people, realize that even though you may see it one way, you might think you're Seinfeld. This person actually thinks they are.
Man.
And it
Yeah.
can really help you adjust how you communicate and deal with them, and realize that if you can give people their Seinfeld moment, you're
Mm,
treating them with a certain level of kind of just respect, and they're able to hold their dignity, that you'll be able to get so much more out of them, if that makes sense. But I
man.
was so shocked. Like I couldn't believe it. Like I was like, how do you see me as Costanza? Because you're not going to say my brother's Costanza. You're not. you know.
But if you think about that, everybody is the main character of their life.
Exactly.
Everyone feels like they're the main character, and essentially they are.
They
And
are.
I mean, and true, like if everybody's life was a reality TV show, they would want that camera focused on them because they are the
exactly.
main one. And
Yep.
and, and to add to your analogy, there was a Men in Black movie. I'm not for sure which one it was, one, two, or three.
Yep.
But Will Smith opened a locker, and within that locker there were multiple lockers, and it kind of signified like how small we are on Earth because there's so many other lockers, and
Yep.
that's how we are. It's like, oh, was somebody talking about me? I'm like, we're not that important for somebody to think they're talking about us. It's like I mean, I hate to break it to everybody because I had to
Yep.
break it to myself. I'm not as important as I thought I was
Yeah.
because the younger me, the collegiate version of me,
Sure.
was arrogant. And
Yep.
arrogance comes from not being sure. It's not being aligned with who I am.
Absolutely.
It's that fake confidence. I'm very confident because I know my strengths, my weaknesses, the opportunities and threats that are around myself.
Yep.
And so for us, it's truly to treat people right and truly realize that only by chance and timing, because I believe everything in life is about timing,
Yep.
the roles can be reversed. Everything can be reversed. If we condemn the homeless, guess what?
Yep.
Couple of months, that could be us. So let's stop looking down on people. Let's figure out ways
Sure.
to bring people up, to pour into people. And then
Absolutely.
also ultimately for people that lead teams, how you point into your team, how you
Yep.
delegate. Hey, you know what? Let me make sure this person gets some face time
Yep.
or run this meeting, but I'm also going to prepare them for this meeting and not
Yep.
set them up for failure. So that's always been my vibe now.
Yep.
I mean, there's times I was a horrible leader. I'm like, because I didn't know what leadership meant because
Absolutely.
I allowed other people to define leaderships. And there's no one size fits all for leaderships, for education, that there will be guardrails
Yep.
for everything in your life. But ultimately, each individual has to put their individual spin on it, and it will
Sure.
look different, but it's your individuality that makes a difference.
Nah, absolutely. Well said. Well said. Lastly, even though that would be a perfect place to end it, I'm gonna add one more question. Um, if higher ed's getting it right, right, and we used to say, what does it look like in 5 or 10 years? But things are moving so fast. What does it look like to you in the next 2 to 3 years if higher ed is really getting it right?
Um, More opportunities, and by more opportunities, I look at that as you will create a system where it's easy for people to go to school. And it's not all the free for all. Like, this is going to sound probably horrible for somebody in higher ed. I don't know if I really agree with education free for all because there has to be a stake in it for you. And
Mm,
some, like, I go back to the town I was from. They used to
sure.
put up basketball goals all the time, and we would tear them down and we break them because we didn't have any stake in it, right?
Right.
But one day they said, we're not putting them up until you guys pay for it. Guess what? They never came down again because we were invested in it. And
Absolutely.
so if you think about education moving forward, it will have to be more personalized and it will have to fit that individual. Two, it will have a greater return on investment. Three, different modalities because now, like, you've had some big name schools that used to look down on online education, and now it's like, oh, now you're doing online education too. Now, is it
Sure.
because you saw an opportunity for financial gain, or did you really see, a
Right.
need for it? And because the need has been there for a minute, and because online education has been around, so that's what I would say, and is that we will partner more in higher ed. I think there's an opportunity for colleges to align. I mean, there was actually a school merger in Charlotte not too, I want to say the last couple of weeks. Um, but I would also say that education will continue to promote diverse thought process.
Right.
And I would just say freedom of speech.
Yeah, listen, I love it, and like you said, it's a little, kind of contrary to the I guess the masses when you say education maybe shouldn't be free. There needs to be an investment. But I remember, to your point, kind of when the courts came down in my neighborhood, and we get a find a crate. We put the crate court up. Sometimes we put whole court, and now all of a sudden we're like, whoa! Somebody try to dunk or something, and we're like, whoa, 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 whoa! Like we're treating this like this is a golden court because we put so much time into putting it up.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so the investment is huge. It makes you value, what it is that you're kind of taking on instead of just going all over the place.
And
Great point.
I'm going to add this too, and hopefully it makes it to the show. I'm proud of you. I am
Thank you.
proud of you of how we connected and what you're doing, and continue to like move mountains, man. And like I'm looking forward, like what's next for you. But it's man, you're the future, and don't take that lightly. People are looking at you. There's somebody is looking at you as like, man, like this guy has it. So keep doing what you're doing, man, and don't stop.
Oh man, I appreciate that. I can't think of a better place to end it than right there. Your energy is palpable. Love your charisma. This is going to be an awesome episode, and I appreciate you squeezing time out of your busy schedule to join the Higher Ed podcast.
Hey, I appreciate you, brother. Thank you.
Do you have LinkedIn, Instagram? Are you working on a novel? Let our audience know how they can catch up with you.
Hey, find me on LinkedIn, K.L.Allen. Yeah, the dots are important, but find me there. There may be something coming on the horizon. I have a book on my bucket list, and so we will see where that's at. As telling my story is important to me before I leave this earth, as I have more time behind me than ahead of me, and so that's important. But again, man, like all of your listeners, man, find me on LinkedIn. Look forward to have a conversation. I'm a new resident of the DMV, so those in the DMV, let's connect for coffee. I'm real big on networking. Anybody in the region, anywhere, like let's connect, let's build something great together.